This morning, you probably woke up to an alarm. You reached for your phone before your feet touched the floor. You ate breakfast at a desk, or in a car, or standing at a counter, scrolling. And somewhere in the back of your mind, a quiet thought passed through. You wondered if you were doing any of it right. You are not the first person to wonder that, but the answer you're looking for isn't in a new supplement. It isn't in a wearable device or a subscription app. The real answer is far stranger. It's older than medicine itself. It's sitting in temple carvings, in clay tablets, in the daily rhythms of people who had no microscopes, no blood tests, and no idea what a calorie was. And somehow, they were healthier for it, in ways that still leave modern researchers uneasy. Let that sit for a moment. Uneasy is the right word. Because the more scientists study ancient health practices, the more they find something they didn't expect. Not superstition, not luck. Pattern. Real, testable, repeatable pattern. The kind that shows up again and again across cultures that never spoke to each other, across oceans and centuries. Egypt and China, Greece and India. Different gods, different languages, different food, but strangely similar instincts about how to live. So what did they know, and why did you forget it? Start with the sun. Ancient Egyptians didn't have clocks the way you do. They had shadows. They had the slow crawl of light across a wall, and they organized their entire lives around it. Wake with the light, eat with the light, sleep when it disappeared. It sounds primitive. It sounds like something you'd outgrow the moment you invented the light bulb. But here's the strange part. Your body never outgrew it. Deep inside your brain, just above where your optic nerves cross, sits a cluster of about 20,000 neurons called the suprachiasmatic nucleus. It has one job. It tracks light. It tells your liver when to expect food. It tells your pancreas when to release insulin. It tells your gut when to be active and when to rest. This is your circadian rhythm, and it is not a metaphor. It is a biological clock, ticking whether you listen to it or not. Neuroscientist Sachin Panda, who runs a lab at the Salk Institute, spent years studying what happens when people eat outside the window their body expects. His research found something remarkable. Mice fed the exact same calories, but only during an 8 to 12-hour window each day, stayed lean and metabolically healthy. Mice who ate the same food spread across all hours of the day and night gained weight and developed markers of disease. Same food, same total calories, different clock, different outcome. Now think about the ancient Egyptian farmer or the Roman laborer or the villager in the Indus Valley. None of them had a choice. There was no artificial light to eat by dark. There was no refrigerator humming at 2 a.m. calling you toward it. Their eating window was carved out for them by the sun itself. What modern researchers now call time-restricted eating, ancient people simply called life. You, on the other hand, can eat breakfast at 6 a.m. and a snack at 11 p.m. and never once notice the 15-hour spread. Your body notices. It just doesn't have a way to tell you in words. Move now to food itself. Not what ancient people ate, but how they thought about it. Hippocrates, writing in Greece more than 2,000 years ago, left behind a phrase that has been repeated so often it's become a cliché. Let food be thy medicine. It sounds quaint now, printed on tea towels and yoga studio walls. But Hippocrates wasn't being poetic. He was describing an entire medical philosophy, one where diet, digestion, and disease were treated as a single interconnected system. Here's where it gets stranger. Traditional Chinese medicine, developing independently on the other side of the world, arrived at something eerily similar. Ancient Chinese physicians didn't separate the gut from the mind. They believed the stomach and spleen governed not just digestion, but mood, clarity, and energy. For centuries, Western medicine dismissed this as folklore. A stomach cannot think. A stomach cannot feel sad. Except now it looks like it can. Justin Sonnenberg, a microbiologist at Stanford, has spent his career studying the trillions of bacteria living in your gut. His research, along with work from many other labs, has revealed something ancient physicians could never have measured, but somehow intuited. Your gut produces the majority of your body's serotonin, not your brain, your gut. The bacteria living inside you communicate directly with your nervous system through something researchers now call the gut-brain axis. Feed that ecosystem poorly, and the signals it sends upward change. Anxiety increases, focus drops, moods destabilizes. Ancient diets, almost without exception, were rich in fiber, fermented foods, and diverse plants. Korean kimchi, German sauerkraut, Egyptian fermented bread, Indian lassi, and pickled vegetables. Different continents, same instinct. Feed the invisible garden inside you, and it feeds you back. You didn't inherit that instinct the same way. Your shelves are lined with food engineered to be shelf-stable, not gut-stable. Highly processed, low in fiber, stripped of the bacteria that once traveled with fermented food into your body. Sonnenberg's research suggests industrialized diets may already have reduced the diversity of human gut bacteria compared to populations still eating traditionally. Something is disappearing inside you, and you can't see it happening. Now think about movement, not exercise, movement. You go to a gym, if you go at all, and you isolate it. 45 minutes, 3 times a week, then you sit back down. Ancient civilizations didn't have that separation because they didn't have the luxury of stillness. Walking to water, grinding grain by hand, building, farming, carrying. Movement wasn't a category of life, it was the fabric of it. But here's the twist you didn't expect. It wasn't just about burning calories. Ancient Greek physicians, and later Roman ones, believed movement was tied directly to mental clarity. Aristotle famously taught while walking, and the term peripatetic, meaning to walk about, comes directly from his school. He wasn't just being eccentric. Modern research on walking and cognition, including studies out of Stanford examining creative output before and after walking, has found that walking measurably increases divergent thinking, the kind of thinking required for problem solving and idea generation. Ancient people weren't walking for cardiovascular health, they didn't know what cardiovascular meant, but their bodies were getting the benefit anyway, folded quietly into the rhythm of ordinary days. Then there's rest, and this might be the part that stings the most. You live in a culture that treats exhaustion like a trophy. Ancient civilizations, almost universally, treated rest as sacred. Egyptian temples had enforced quiet. Roman society, for all its excess, still structured the day around a midday pause, a rest called meridiare, from which the modern word for nap in several Romance languages still descends. In many agricultural societies across history, the heat of midday simply forced people to stop, retreat to shade, and let the body recover before continuing. You don't stop at midday. You push through it with caffeine and call it productivity. Sleep researcher Matthew Walker, whose work at UC Berkeley has become some of the most cited sleep research of the past decade, has pointed to something unsettling. Human sleep before the industrial era wasn't always the single consolidated block you're used to. Historical records, and Walker's own research summaries, describe a pattern in some pre-industrial societies of what's called biphasic sleep, a first sleep and a second sleep, separated by a quiet waking period in the middle of the night, used for reflection, prayer, or conversation, before returning to rest until dawn. Modern life erased that gap entirely. Electric light pushed bedtime later, alarms cut mornings shorter. The result, according to Walker's research, is a population chronically sleep-deprived in a way ancient humans, bound to sunlight, largely were not. So here is the counterintuitive twist, the part that reframes everything you've just heard. It would be easy to assume ancient civilizations were healthier because they were simpler, less stressed, less complicated. But that's not quite true. Ancient life was brutal in ways modern life isn't. Disease outbreaks with no antibiotics, famine with no supply chains to fall back on, childbirth without anesthesia or sterile tools. In almost every measurable way, ancient people faced more physical danger than you do today. What they didn't face was a mismatch. Their bodies and their environments were built for each other. Light matched eating. Movement matched daily life. Food matched what their gut bacteria had evolved to expect. Rest matched the setting sun. The danger was external. The rhythm, at least, was intact. You face the opposite problem. Your environment is safer than any human environment in history, and yet your rhythm is broken. light at all hours, food at all hours, movement removed almost entirely from necessity, rest treated as optional. You have engineered away almost every external threat ancient humans faced, and in doing so, you accidentally engineered away the very patterns that kept their internal systems balanced. This is the modern mirror, and it's not a comfortable one. Every wellness trend you've scrolled past in the last year, cold plunges, fasting windows, fermented foods, walking pads under standing desks, sleep hygiene routines, isn't new information. It's old information rediscovered by people who had to relearn what their ancestors never had to learn in the first place, because their ancestors never left it behind. There's something almost tragic about that, and something hopeful too, because it means the answer was never hidden. It was never locked away in some undiscovered ancient text. It was simply forgotten, buried under convenience, replaced by a world engineered for comfort instead of alignment.
Walter Longo, a biogerontologist at USC who spent decades researching fasting and longevity, often points out that some of the longest living populations on Earth, in places researchers call blue zones, still eat in ways that echo ancient patterns almost by accident. Not because they read a study, because the pattern was simply never interrupted where they lived. Smaller eating windows, plant-heavy fiber-rich diets, daily movement built into life rather than scheduled around it. Strong social bonds, which ancient philosophers from Aristotle to Confucius treated as inseparable from physical health, long before anyone measured cortisol. That's the last piece, and maybe the most overlooked one. Ancient civilizations rarely separated physical health from community. Illness wasn't just a private event, it was communal. Healing happened around people, not away from them. Modern research on loneliness, including large studies linking social isolation to increased mortality risk at a level comparable to smoking, suggests that ancient instinct wasn't sentimental, it was protective. So when you think about what ancient civilizations knew about health, don't picture rituals and superstition. Picture something closer to accidental precision. A species that hadn't yet built the tools to measure its own biology, but had built an entire way of living around it anyway, simply because there was no other option. You have the tools now. You have the studies, the sleep labs, the gut microbiome research, the circadian scientists mapping exactly why the old patterns worked. What you don't have, most days, is the alignment. The sun still rises and sets exactly the way it did for the Egyptians who built their lives around it. The only thing that changed is you stopped listening. This morning you woke up to an alarm. Tomorrow morning you have a choice your ancestors never did. You can let the light back in.